Book of Heaven, Volume 28, Part 7, August 15th, 1930. How the life of the Sovereign Queen was formed in the Divine Son. I was thinking about my celestial mamma in the act when she was assumed into heaven, and was offering my little acts done in the divine Fiat to give her my homages, my praises for her honor and glory. But while I was doing this, my sweet Jesus told me, "My daughter, the glory, the greatness, the power of my celestial mamma in our fatherland is insuperable. And do you know why? Her life on earth was lived inside our divine Son. She never went out from within the abode of her Creator. She knew nothing else but our will alone. She loved nothing else but our interests. She asked for nothing else but our glory. It can be said that she formed the sun of her life within the Son of her Creator. So whoever wants to find her in the celestial dwelling must come into our sun, where the Sovereign Queen, having formed her sun, spreads her maternal rays for the good of all, and blazes with such beauty as to enrapture the whole of heaven, all feeling twice as happy for having a mother so holy, and a queen so glorious and powerful. The Virgin is the first daughter, and the only one who possesses her Creator, and she is the only one to have lived life in the Son of the Supreme Being. And since she drew her life from this eternal Son, it is no wonder that, having lived of light, she formed her most refulgent sun, that gladdens the whole celestial court. This is precisely what it means to live in my divine will, to live of light, and to form one's life within our own sun. This was the purpose of creation, to have the creatures created by us, our beloved children, within our own abode, to nourish them with our own foods, to clothe them with royal garments, and to let them enjoy our own goods. What terrestrial father and mother think of putting out of their home the fruit of their womb, their dear children, and of not giving their inheritance to their own children? No one, I believe. On the contrary, how many sacrifices do they not make in order to render their children rich and happy? If a terrestrial father and mother reach this, much more so does the celestial Father. He wanted and loved his children to remain in his home, so as to keep them around himself, to delight with them, and keep them as the crown of his creative hands. But man, ungrateful, abandoned our home, refused our goods, and contented himself with going wandering, living in the darkness of his human will. Fiat. August 24th, 1930. How the divine will assumes all forms in order to give itself to the creature. The creation of man. Installation of the center of love and of the divine Fiat. My abandonment in the divine volition continues. I feel that its invincible power absorbs me into itself, and in so many ways that I cannot do without following its acts. Now, while I was following the acts of the divine will done in creation, my lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, the love of my divine fiat toward creatures is so great that it assumes all forms in order to give itself to the creature. It assumes the form of heavens to remain stretched out over his head, and by remaining perennially extended, it embraces him from all sides, guides him, protects him, defends him, without ever withdrawing, remaining always heavens, in order to form its heaven in the heart of the creature. It assumes the form of stars, and it makes its meek twinkling sweetly descend upon the creature, to caress her with its kiss of light, and penetrate sweetly into her, that it may form the stars of the most beautiful virtues in the heaven of her soul. It assumes the form of sun, to irradiate her with light, and with its vibrant heat descend into the depth of her soul, and with the strength of its light and heat it forms the tints of the most beautiful colors, in order to form the sun of its fiat in the creature. It assumes the form of wind to purify her, and with its empire, blowing, it maintains the divine life lit, and as it blows, it makes it grow in the heart of the creature. My divine will lowers itself to everything, and its love is so great that it constitutes itself life of everything that can serve the creature, and it reaches the point of assuming the form of air to let itself be breathed, of food to nourish her, of water to quench her thirst. In sum, there is nothing of which the creature makes use, in which my will does not run together in order to give itself incessantly to the creature. But how does she correspond to me, to the many multiple ways which my fiat assumes in order to besiege the creature, to the so many loving forms, such that, if she does not recognize it in one way, she may recognize it in another. If one form does not breach into her, another might breach through, to receive at least a gaze, a smile of satisfaction, an invitation to let it descend into her soul to reign, a thank you of gratitude at its so many follies of love. Ah, how many times my divine will is left there, with the creature paying no attention to it. What sorrow! How pierced it remains! But in spite of this, it does not stop. It continues incessantly, and with its firmness, all divine, to make its divine life flow within all created things, to offer, beneath their veil, its life to all, waiting with invincible patience for one who must recognize it and receive it, so as to form its life under human appearances, and form, and therefore reign completely in all the things created by us. After this, I was following the divine will in the acts of creation, and as I arrived at Eden, where man was created, my always lovable Jesus added, "My daughter, the creation of man was the center in which our fiat and our love installed themselves to hold there their perennial dwelling. Our divine being held everything inside of us, the center of our love, and the carrying out of the life of our will. By creating man, it wanted to form the second center of our love, so that our fiat might carry out human lives with its empire and dominion, as it did within our Supreme Being. Therefore you must know that in creating Adam, all creatures were created in him. All were present to us. None of them escaped us. We loved all creatures as him and in him. And when with so much love we formed his humanity, molding it and working it with our creative hands, forming the bones, extending the nerves, covering them with flesh, forming all the harmonies of the human life in Adam, all creatures were molded and worked. In all of them, we formed the bones, extended the nerves, and covering them with flesh, we left the touch of our creative hands, the mark of our love, the vivifying virtue of our will. And as we infused the soul in him with the power of our omnipotent breath, souls were formed in all the bodies with the same power in which the soul of Adam was formed. See then how each creature is a new creation, as if we had created the new Adam, because in each of them we want to renew the great prodigy of the creation, the installation of the center of our love, the carrying out of the life of our fiat. So great was the excess of our love in creating man, that until the last creature comes on earth, we will remain in continuous act of creation, to give to each one what was given to the first man created, our overflowing love, the touch of our creative hands, for the formation of each of them. Therefore, my daughter, I recommend to you that you know how to recognize and preserve within yourself the installation of our love and the operating life of our fiat, and you will feel the prodigies of the continuous creation and our love overflowing, such that, as it drowns you with love, you will feel nothing but my love and my will. Fiat. August 29th, 1930. How created things are pregnant with divine will. The crosses form the way that leads to heaven. My abandonment in the divine fiat continues. An invincible force transports me into its divine acts, and I feel and know the divine will operating in all created things, as it makes me the sweet invitation to follow it in its acts, in order to have my company. But while I was doing this, my always lovable Jesus told me, "My daughter, all created things are pregnant with my divine will. which left itself in them, not for us, who had no need, but for love of creatures, giving itself in as many distinct ways, for as many things as it created, acting as true mother. It wanted to assail the creatures with as much love for as many things as it issued to the light of the day. It wanted to give itself in each instant, without interruption, so as to give itself sip by sip, to form its life and extend its kingdom in each soul. This is why you see that there is not one thing from which my Fiat does not want to give itself. And it can be said that each created thing forms its throne of love, from which it makes descend its mercy, its graces, and the path in order to communicate its divine life. It is as though on the lookout to see what good it can do to its children, if they open their hearts to it, to receive its goods and to conform to its divine ways. So each created thing is a call that it makes to the creature to receive the gift that my divine will wants to give her. Each created thing is a new love which it wants to feed her, and one more act of its life which it wants to carry out toward and inside the creature. But alas, how many ingratitudes on their part! My divine will embraces them. It clasps them to its bosom with its arms of light, and they escape from within its light without returning to it the embrace and looking at who it is that loves them so much. Therefore, my daughter, you, be its repairer. Follow it in all the calls that it makes to you by means of each created thing, so as to give it love for love, and receive all the sips of its divine life in the depth of your soul, to give it the freedom of letting it reign. Then I was following its acts, and my abandonment in the supreme volition. But my poor mind was occupied with the many incidents which our Lord had disposed and disposes for my poor existence. And my sweet Jesus added, my daughter, the crosses, the incidents, the mortifications, the acts, the abandonments of creatures, everything that one can suffer for love of me, are nothing other than the pebbles which mark the way that leads to heaven. So, at the moment of death, the creature will see that everything she has suffered has served her to form the road, which has marked with indelible ways and with unmovable stones the straight path that leads to the celestial fatherland. And if everything that my providence has disposed for her to suffer, she has suffered in order to fulfill my divine will, to receive not the pain, but an act of its divine life, she will form as many sons for as many acts as she has done, and pains that she has suffered, in such a way that her road will appear as marked, to the right and to the left, by suns, which taking her and investing her with their light, will lead her into the celestial regions. There is a footnote here about the word sons. It comes from the last words spoken by Luisa to her confessor Father Benedetto Calvi, 1 hour before she died on March 4th, 1947. This is the quote. I now see a long, beautiful, and spacious road, illuminated by infinite and refulgent suns. Oh, yes, I recognize them. They are the sons of my acts done in the divine will. So, starting again from the previous sentence. And if everything that my providence has disposed for her to suffer, she has suffered in order to fulfill my divine will, to receive not the pain, but an act of its divine life, she will form as many sons for as many acts as she has done, and pains that she has suffered, in such a way that her road will appear as marked to the right and to the left by sons, which taking her and investing her with their light, will lead her into the celestial regions. Therefore, the many incidents of life are necessary, because they serve to form for oneself the road, and to mark the way to heaven. If roads are not formed, it is difficult to go from one town to another. Much more so, it is difficult to reach eternal glory. Fiat. September 20th, 1930. Bitternesses, the slow poison of good. The divine will, cradle of the soul. Jesus, divine administrator of his most holy will. I was feeling all immersed in the divine fiat. Its light dazzles my intellect, and while it absorbs me into its light, it makes me follow its acts that it did in creation. But while I was doing this, I felt such bitterness and oppression as to make me struggle in doing my acts in the divine will. And my sweet Jesus, having compassion for me, told me, my daughter, how much pity I feel for your bitterness. I feel it being poured into my heart. Therefore, courage. Don't you know that oppressions, bitternesses, are the slow poison of good, which produces such hardship as to reduce the soul to an extreme agony, in such a way that she feels agony in the heart, and my love agonizes in her heart. She feels agony on the lips, and my prayer agonizes. She feels agony in the hands, in the steps, and my steps and my works feel themselves agonizing. More so, since in the creature who wants to have my divine will as life, my will being one with hers, I feel her agony poured into my divine person. Therefore, courage! Abandon yourself into my arms, and I will make more light, more refulgent, arise from my divine will. And as it takes the form of cradle, I will rock you in it, to communicate to you my divine rest. And with its light, and with its heat, it will destroy the slow poison of your bitternesses, changing them into sweetnesses, and into font of contentments. and resting in the cradle of my divine will, you shall take sweet rest. And upon waking up, you will find that bitternesses and oppressions have been cast away from you, and I will keep you in my arms with your usual sweetness and serenity, to make the life of my divine will grow more in you. Then I continued as much as I could my abandonment in the divine Fiat, and my sweet Jesus added, "My daughter, bitternesses, oppressions, and everything that does not regard my will, occupy space in your soul, and my divine will does not feel free to be able to extend its light, and with its creative and vivifying virtue, make its life arise in each particle and receptacle of your soul. It feels encircled as though by clouds, such that even though the sun is there, the clouds, putting themselves between the sun and the earth, prevent the solar rays from descending with the fullness of light to give light to the earth. The same for the sun of my divine will. It feels hindered by the clouds of bitternesses and oppressions from extending its light in the depth of the creature, also in the small receptacles, and being able to say, everything gives of my will, everything belongs to me, everything is mine. And I, your Jesus, who has taken on the commitment to form a soul, all of my will, suffer and remain hindered in my crafting. In fact, you must know that I am the divine administrator of my fiat in the creature. And when I see her disposed to do my will in everything, in each act she does, I set to the work of preparation. Suppose that you want to do an act of love. Immediately I get down to work. I place in it my breath. I lay a dose of my love. I embellish it with the variety of the beauty it contains. And then, divine administrator of my will as I am, I administer my divine will upon that act of love, in such a way that, in that act, one no longer recognizes the act of the creature, but an act of love, as if it had come out from the center of my divinity. I am very jealous of the acts that the creature wants to do, as animated by my divine will. I do not admit any disparity between her acts and mine, and in order to have this, I must place of my own, and my work, and this in all of her acts. If she wants to do acts of adoration, of prayers, of sacrifice, I place in them my work, so that her adoration may be the echo of the divine adoration, her prayer may be the echo of mine, her sacrifice may be the repeater of mine. In sum, I must find myself in each act of the creature. I, your Jesus, as the owner, possessor of my divine will, would not administrate it if I did not find the sanctity, the purity, the love of my humanity in the act of the creature. Therefore, I want to find her clear of any clouds that might shadow my divine will. Therefore, be attentive, my daughter. Do not hinder my work, which I want to do in your soul. Fiat. You have reached the end of the Book of Heaven, Volume 28, Part 7. Fiat.